Don't think about death. That's the advice we're given. Push it away. Stay busy. Focus on the living. But here's what no one tells you. Avoiding the thought of death doesn't make you more alive. It makes you numb to what you already have. The Buddha didn't look away from mortality. He walked straight into it. And what he found there wasn't despair. It was something that looks remarkably like love. Today, I'll show you what happens when you stop running. In the foothills of the Himalayas, in the north of ancient India, there was a small kingdom called Kapilavastu. Its royal palace stood enclosed behind high stone walls. Inside those walls, flowers bloomed in every season. Music drifted through the corridors. Feasts were laid out on long tables. Old age didn't exist within those walls. Neither did sickness. Neither did death. Or at least, that was how it seemed. The king had built those walls out of love for his only son. But behind that love was also a prayer, silent and desperate. Please, let this child never know the world outside. Then one spring morning, a breeze drifted in over the walls, and the young prince, drawn by something he couldn't name, stepped into a carriage for the very first time. The wheels turned slowly over the stone road, and the silk curtains of the carriage swayed gently, almost like a warning. Outside the palace gates, an old man sat hunched at the roadside, his back curved like a tree bent by decades of wind. The prince had no word for what he was seeing. He turned to his attendant and asked, in a voice still soft with the innocence of sheltered rooms, "What has happened to this man?" And the attendant, who had been warned by the king never to speak of such things, found that the truth came out of him anyway, the way water finds every crack in a stone wall, no matter how carefully it was built. The moment the carriage passed through the palace gate, the prince, Gautama, blinked against the light. A wide open road, people moving in every direction, dust in the air, the noise of life. It was nothing like inside. They hadn't gone far when the carriage slowed. At the edge of the road stood an old man. His back was bent deeply, his hands knotted like old wood. With each step he leaned hard on a walking stick, and yet he kept moving forward. Gautama leaned toward his driver. "What happened to that man? Is he injured?" The driver was quiet for a moment, then he answered gently, "No, my lord, he is old." "Old? In time, all people come to this. The body weakens, the face changes, strength fades. This is what aging is." Gautama said nothing. He just looked. Decades of living were written on that man's face. Joy and sorrow and hard years. But in this moment, right now, he was suffering. "Then will I become like that too?" "Yes, my lord, as will I." The carriage moved on, but something inside Gautama had begun to shift. The next time they stopped, a man was lying by the side of the road. He was burning with fever, his clothes soaked through with sweat, his body trembling. "And him?" Gautama asked. "He is sick. His body no longer does what he wills it to do." "Can anyone become ill like this?" "Anyone. You, me, no one can know when it will come." Gautama's hands trembled slightly. In the palace, no one had grown old before his eyes. No one had fallen ill, not in front of him. But now he knew. Beyond the walls, a different reality had always been waiting. The third time the carriage stopped, it was near a gathering of people in an open square. Several men were carrying someone. The person didn't move, made no sound. Gautama understood before he asked, "That person has died?" The driver nodded without speaking. Gautama stepped down from the carriage. He walked close and looked at the face of the one being carried. There was nothing there, no suffering, no peace, only stillness. He stood there for a long time. "That will be my face too, someday." He hadn't said it to anyone. It was simply a knowing. When he climbed back into the carriage, he looked like a different person from the young man who had set out that morning. On the way home, they passed one more figure, a wandering monk, dressed in simple robes, holding a small alms bowl, walking slowly and quietly. No ornaments, no wealth, and yet his face held a kind of stillness, a light that didn't flicker. Gautama stopped the carriage again. "Who is that?" "A renunciant. He has left everything behind to seek the truth." The monk noticed Gautama's gaze. He bowed gently and walked on. His figure grew smaller in the distance. Gautama watched until he disappeared completely. That night, Gautama sat alone in a room in the palace. His beautiful wife was nearby. His newborn son slept close by. There was laughter from a celebration, and yet all of it felt far away. Old age, sickness, death, they could not be escaped. They would come, for everyone, for him. Knowing this now, what did these beautiful days mean? The question had no answer, but it burned in his chest, quietly and completely. That night he walked to where his son lay sleeping and stood over him for a long time, the small chest rising and falling, the tiny fists curled loosely at his sides. He reached out, almost touched the child's face, then he pulled his hand back. Even this, especially this, was something that could be lost. What did the young prince encounter on that day? An old man, a sick man, a dead man, a wandering monk. These 4 encounters are known as the 4 sights, but the important thing isn't what he saw, it's what he could no longer unknow. That is where the heart of this story lives. Most of us spend our lives finding ways not to think about death. That's far off, it doesn't concern me yet, let's not talk about such things. Death as a topic can feel almost forbidden, something to be kept out of polite conversation. But I want to offer a question. Are we afraid of death itself? Or are we afraid because somewhere inside us, we hold a quiet belief that we shouldn't have to die? This is where Buddhist understanding begins. Death is not painful because it exists. Death is painful because we carry an invisible assumption. I will stay. Things will stay. This should last. When that assumption meets reality, it breaks us. Birth, aging, sickness, death. In Buddhist teaching, these are described as the 4 fundamental forms of human suffering. That might sound bleak, but it isn't. Saying this is suffering is not the end of the story. It's the beginning, because you cannot find a way through something you refuse to look at. You cannot see the exit from a room you pretend you're not in. What Gautama encountered beyond those palace walls was exactly that structure, the shape of suffering itself, and he didn't look away. He stood before the old man, the sick man, the dead man, and he let himself see. That act of seeing, that was his beginning. There's something else worth sitting with. We tend to think of the self as something fixed, a same me who was here yesterday, here today, and will be here tomorrow. But is that really true? Buddhist teaching speaks of what we might call the 5 aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental activity, and consciousness. What we call I is a temporary gathering of these 5 streams. There is no solid, unchanging self to be found anywhere. Even now, your cells are being replaced. Your emotions shift. Your beliefs evolve. When we devote our energy to protecting the self that never changes, death becomes the ultimate threat, because it promises to take away the very thing we've been defending. But something that has always been changing has nothing to lose to change. It was always part of the flow. Fearing death and knowing death are not the same thing. Fearing means turning away, building walls, staying inside. Knowing means turning toward, standing still, letting the truth land in you. Gautama chose knowing, and that choice led to everything that came after. There's an old story of a woman named Kisa Gotami, who came to the Buddha cradling her dead child, begging for medicine to bring him back. He told her to fetch a mustard seed from any house in the village that had never known loss. She knocked on every door. She found no such house. And in that walking, that searching, that slow and devastating realization, she began to wake up. She did not wake up because someone explained death to her. She woke up because she walked through it herself, door by door, grief in her arms, until the truth became impossible to refuse. That is the kind of knowing the Buddha pointed toward. Not a fact you learn, but a door you finally stop pretending isn't there. This story is 2,500 years old, and yet, are we not also living inside our own palace walls? The wall called busyness, the wall called entertainment, the wall called I'm still young or this doesn't apply to me yet. We arrange our days so that death stays just out of sight. That's not a flaw, it's human. We naturally move away from what frightens us. But those same walls, the ones meant to protect us, may be quietly shrinking the life we're living right now. Imagine someone who is a few years from retirement. They lie awake at night, anxious about what comes next. Money, their body slowing down, being alone, becoming someone who is no longer needed. If you trace that anxiety back to its root, what do you find? Most of it comes from a feeling that something is being taken away from them, something they believe they were entitled to keep. I should stay healthy. I should still be needed. This life I have should continue. These are not demands, they are quiet assumptions, held without knowing, and when aging begins to challenge them, the fear arrives. It isn't aging that frightens us. It's the image we carry of a self who was never supposed to age. Or think of this, you come home from a funeral. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling. Why did they go first? How many years do I have left? When I die, will anything of me remain? Every one of us has had a night like that. And most of us, by morning, return to ordinary life. We let the day's noise cover it over. We step back behind the walls. Buddhism asks us to resist that reflex, just slightly. A person who carries the awareness of death into each day sees differently than one who keeps it locked outside. When you know that your time with someone is finite, you begin to actually listen when they speak. When you know today is one of a limited number of days, today begins to matter in a way it didn't before. And here is one more way of looking at it. What if the you of today is already different from the you of yesterday? We feel continuous, but we are more like a flame. The flame of last night and the flame of this morning are not the same flame. The one a moment from now will be different again, and yet the flame burns on. When protecting the unchanging self becomes the goal of a life, every change becomes a loss. But when the burning itself is what matters, when being alive right now is enough, aging and illness and death begin to look a little different. Gautama didn't come home with answers that day. He came home with a question, and a refusal to stop looking. That question didn't leave him when he re-entered the palace gates, and it didn't leave him when he sat at the dinner table or watched the lamps being lit at dusk. It followed him the way a shadow follows, quietly, without asking permission. Most of us have felt something like this. A moment at a wedding when you suddenly thought of someone who was no longer here, or a birthday that felt heavier than it should have, as if the candles were counting something you hadn't agreed to count. There's one small thing you might try, just once today. Give yourself a single moment each day to hold the awareness of death. That might sound heavy, but the practice itself is very simple. At night before you sleep, lie still and close your eyes, and say quietly to yourself, "Today will not come again." This isn't meant to frighten. It's a return to what's true. The words you spoke today, the meal you ate, the sky you passed under, the feeling that moved through you, all of it belonged only to today. The conversation you had with someone today, it existed only between today's version of you and today's version of them. That specific exchange will never exist again. When that lands, even slightly, today might feel different. You might find yourself thinking, "I wish I'd listened a little more carefully," or "That thing I got upset about this morning, it wasn't worth what I gave it." These small recognitions, arriving one night at a time, accumulate into something. The Buddha and his students made this a daily practice. Each evening they would note, "Another day has passed. Whether tomorrow comes, no one can say." This wasn't performed as a ritual of despair. It was a practice of presence, a way of honoring each day before releasing it. I won't promise this will change everything, but your relationship with today, the day that is already ending, may begin to shift, gently and without force. Until one night, perhaps you find yourself thinking, "Today is done. I met today's version of myself. That was enough." And in that quiet moment, something loosens. Not because life has become easier, but because you've stopped arguing with its nature. A farmer who knows winter is coming does not spend autumn pretending otherwise. He gathers what there is to gather, and he is grateful for the light while it lasts. And perhaps that is all any of us can do, not to hold today so tightly that we miss it, nor so loosely that it slips through without being touched. The monk Thich Nhat Hanh once described washing dishes as if each bowl were the most precious object in the world. Not because the bowl is precious, but because the hands washing it will never wash that particular evening again. If today were the last day, who would you reach out to tonight? What would you want to say? You don't need to answer right now. Just let the question rest quietly somewhere inside you. A monk once spent 3 days composing the perfect letter to his estranged brother, crossing out word after word until the page was soft as cloth, and on the 4th day, his brother died. What remained was not the unsent letter, but the silence that followed him the rest of his life, sitting beside him at every meal like an uninvited guest. The letter, in the end, had only ever needed 3 words. We already know which ones. We explored this from another angle in a previous teaching. What shifts inside us the moment we truly accept that life is finite? You'll find the link waiting for you in the description below. When the young prince stepped outside the palace walls, he did not find answers. He found a question: old age, illness, death. He did not turn away from any of them. And that refusal to look away was where his journey began. We are on the same road. Being afraid of death is proof that you are alive. There is nothing to be ashamed of in that fear. But try, just a little, to bring it closer, rather than pushing it away. When you can sit with the fear without fleeing from it, something comes into view. The person beside you today, the hours moving through this day, what you are feeling right now. Outside the palace walls in the open light, these things can shine differently. Gautama eventually found his awakening, but only after years of searching. And the beginning of all of it was a single day. One spring morning, a carriage ride beyond familiar walls, 4 encounters, met with open eyes. You may have encountered something today too. Where it leads, no one can say. But what you have seen, and it will stay with you. A seed does not know it is becoming a tree, and yet the roots find their way down quietly in the dark, without needing to be told. Something in you recognized what it saw, before your mind had words for it. That recognition is not nothing. It is perhaps everything. Pause. May today's words quietly take root within you. One story a day. In a week your words will change. In a month your eyes will change. In a year the same world will look completely different.